Welcome to another episode of the Style and Strategy podcast, where we explore the power of personal brand and style. I'm Sonia, your host, and today I'm driving into really adaptability, happiness, and reinvention with the incredible Penny Locaso, the world's first happiness hacker. Penny is on a mission to teach 10 million people how to flourish by 2025. After leaving a very successful corporate career and founding HackingHappy Co, she has become the leading expert in intentional adaptability. In this episode, we will cover off on her journey and how that's really shaped and evolved her brand, the evolution of her leadership journey too, and really the key lessons she's learnt along the way. Penny's also going to share a little bit about her go-to style signature piece, and you are not going to want to miss this episode. I absolutely loved chatting with Penny today, so stay tuned.
I'm Sonia, a personal brand and style coach. My journey began in the corporate world and through lived experiences has led me where I am today. I've walked in those uncomfortable shoes, faced the same challenges and questioned my path to professional success while simultaneously navigating my personal style journey and the challenges that each decade brings. I wholeheartedly believe in the fusion of personal brand and style strategy. My mission here is to provide you with practical, actionable strategies and lived experiences to help you unlock your next level of success through the power of personal brand and style. Let's get started.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Style and Strategy podcast. I am so excited to be able to have Penny Locaso on the podcast today. So we're going to dive straight in because, that's me, like to get straight into the facts, no fluffing around. So Penny, tell me a little bit around your journey from being, in this successful corporate career to then becoming the world's first happiness hacker, which is such an incredibly inspiring story. So maybe take me a little bit through some of that leadership journey and how that's evolved for you over the years.
So I had a very successful career working for a global giant up until about 2014. And I always say I ticked all the boxes I was told would make me successful, down to the fact that I even had the white picket fence. So, I ticked all these boxes, and I'll never forget, I walked into my backyard one day. My son was 3 at the time. I said, come hang inside. Let's, go and cook, because I had Fridays off because I worked part-time, which really meant that I worked 6 days a week. I just squeezed it in everywhere around, everything else. And he turned around and said to me, when I asked him to come inside and hang out, he turned around and said to me, I can't, I'm too busy. And it was like a dagger through the heart. And it was kind of, I always say, it wasn't like a light bulb moment, but it was like this dimmer was gradually turned up within. And I started to ask myself in that moment, like, what is busy? Like, where does a child get busy from? What does busy tell a child in terms of their value in the family? And, what is busy looking like? And what is it actually stopping me from doing? When I asked myself, what are the things that make me happy and enable me to flourish? It was human connection, positively impacting the lives of others, sharing experiences and being present and in a moment. And all of those things were being sidelined by my son's called out busy. And so I did something really crazy. And within 7 months, I turned my whole life completely upside down in pursuit of happiness. So I left a 16-year career as a female with high potential, which I hate the term because I'm yet to meet a female with no potential. I relocated the family from Perth back to Melbourne, which was my home, left an 18-year relationship and started my own purpose-driven company with no idea what I was doing and complete fear, yet faith that I'd find a way. And that was the beginning. That was only 10 years ago now.
Such an incredible moment. And I guess listening to you talk about it, I've instantly got goosebumps because I think, myself as well as many of my listeners can really resonate around those key moments. And normally it is your children that spark something because they look at the world through this different lens that sometimes when you're on the grind and especially when you're seen as a high performing potential, individual, that you're focused on the go of that next step. And there's something else there that they pick up, through those conversations. So when I think about that journey, I really think about the power of reinvention. right?
Mm.
And there's two elements I kind of want to go down on this path. So the first one being, to reinvent yourself after being known as something else for such a long period of time takes not only work from a marketing perspective and all of those external things, but actually internally. So take me back to when you reinvented yourself then to go out as that. What did that take for you to do that?
I wouldn't change it, but it's excruciating, right? And I think we're very good at suppressing the crappy feelings, but you can't ignore the pain of reinvention. Like, I always think of the lotus flower. The lotus flower starts at the bottom of the pond and it's got to push through all that thick mud before it can bloom and become this beautiful thing. And it's horrible and it's messy and it feels like it's never going to happen, right? So I think it's an analogy or a metaphor that's a beautiful way to look at it. But there was a number of things. Like, first thing was, I'll never forget when I went to a barbecue and for the first time I didn't have my corporate title or, the big global giant behind me, and someone asked me what I did and I was like, I don't know. And I just was like, oh my God, I have attached my whole identity to this thing that, I had a great career, but it's like, where's the meaning in that? And how is it that I consider myself a somewhat intelligent woman? And at 40 years of age, I've never really asked myself, what is it that gives me meaning and fulfillment? I used to wake in the middle of the night around 2 a.m., saying to myself, who the hell do you think you are to think that you could pull this off? All of the inner conversation that all of, the people that reach out, clients, prospective clients come to me, we all have it. I was completely afraid. I was there was nothing other than my belief in myself that actually was evidence that it would work out. And the thing was, I didn't know how it would work out. There's no certainty in the outcome. All I can do is make steps in a direction and see where it lands. So I had all of the negative inner conversation, but what I learned, and I had to learn pretty early on, was that is completely normal and it's okay to feel that way, but I should not let that be a reason to stop me from progressing, my purpose. And it's funny now, I'm launching a campaign next month, which is called Why You'll Never Be Ready. And it's basically, I've done all this research and what I've discovered is all these women that want to have a positive impact in the world who are afraid to put themselves out there, as you say, as this reinvented thing, as an expert in a new domain. The number one thing that they tell me is, I'm not ready yet. And it's not ready is an excuse. Because the reality is I have never been ready for any of the stuff that I've done. And if I waited to be ready, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah. Oh, very powerful. So then if I ask from a second prong in relation to that, so through that journey, how do you think your personal brand and maybe style evolved through that period?
Oh, it's such a good question. Far out. And the thing is, evolve is a really important thing when it comes to a brand, right? So my business name when I started out was Be Kindred, because where I started is not where I am now, right? The concept of what I was doing and what I was trying to create was completely different. I spent $10,000 when I started out and developed a platform, an online platform, $10,000 of my own money. And it was basically, I wanted to teach small business owners how to get better at working on the business rather than in it. And so I was interviewing all of these cool sort of younger, people that were on Instagram who were purpose-driven and getting content. And after 6 months, I was like, I don't want to do this. This is not what I want. And all I kept getting was asked, people kept coming to me and saying, would you come and sit on a panel and talk about how you turned your life upside down? Because I was sharing the fact that I had no idea of what I was doing, but I was going to find a way to work it out on LinkedIn. And back there, we're talking 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Many people were not doing this back then. They weren't talking honestly on LinkedIn. I was talking about how messy it was, how I had no idea what I was doing. And it was as a corporate, that was unheard of. People were just what the hell? Something's done with it. And that was kind of what I learned pretty quickly was that was what connected with people. Was being honest about the fact that I didn't have the answers. But you know what? I knew that I wanted more meaning and fulfillment, and I was going to find a way to work out or to create a roadmap to navigate uncertainty. And so that was what helped me evolve. But my business now is called HackingHappy Co. And I'm at a point in terms of the next evolution, 10 years in, I'm going to rebrand probably before the end of the year and come back to my name. because people buy me, people come to me, and I feel like having an additional brand is just another barrier, to people connecting. So yeah, and the thing is not attachment. Like I do a lot of yoga. This idea of, one of the most powerful things you can do is just not be attached. Because it really doesn't matter if your brand name changes. If you one week are this thing and the next week you evolve into the next iteration of that, like that is growth. That is you learning and reiterating. That is where the magic is. And God, I've had that many evolutions since I started. And again, that's what connects. I've spoken about it openly as I find my way.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, because I guess coming as someone who's come from change, transformation and tech, one of the things that was sort of, ingrained in me all the way through was, you're going to pilot, you're going to pivot, you're going to test. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. Learn from your failures, all the stuff that you hear about now. But, I was doing that before, but yet never really applied that. Many of us never apply that theory to our own lives, right? Because when it's got to be rolled out or launched or whatever it is, whether that's in corporate or for you personally, it always seems to be you've got to tick all these boxes before it can go out. Like you can't, it's got to be absolutely perfect. Otherwise, you're potentially deemed, this, what's everyone going to think of me? So I really love the framing of how you've positioned that to really think about it as what's the worst that can happen here? You grow, right? That's the positive spin on it. So when you think about your biggest lessons and learnings, and you've touched on a couple already, what would you say some of your biggest lessons that maybe you learned through your corporate career that you then took in to your entrepreneurial world? or maybe when, that's it, it's gone, right? Was there anything like that you would think back on?
Yes, I actually say the opposite. And I don't discredit, I had an amazing career. I worked with amazing people. Wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't have that. But I actually think the most powerful thing that I did was go through a process of unlearning the things that had served me in corporate and realizing very early on those were not going to serve me as I moved through this journey. And again, non-attachment, just letting go of that was extremely powerful. I mean, I remember in the first year, I was writing. I wasn't a writer. I started writing, right? And writing blogs and sharing things. And people used to say to me, and I'll never forget, they're like, God, you sound, especially in the entrepreneurial world, they were like, God, you sound really intelligent, but I have no idea what you're saying. Because you are so conditioned to make everything sound perfect, and polished. And the thing was, it just didn't connect. Didn't connect at all. And so I had to change the way I spoke. I had to change the way I wrote. And it wasn't changing me. It was just changing the conditioning of things having to be so bloody polished. And what I realized was that the polish didn't resonate in this space. What resonated was the trying and the failure, and then sharing the failure and sharing how that then informed the next iteration of where I was heading. So I felt like it was actually a process of unlearning. But, if I think about the lessons in this journey, what has been the most profound lessons? The number one thing, first and foremost, is that it is a long game. And anyone who tries to sell you anything that tells you you're going to be able to sort this out and work it out overnight and have all this passive income or make, 30K months in 5 minutes, it is an absolute lie. I have spent time with, thousands of entrepreneurs, and I am yet to meet anyone where it happened overnight. It is a long game, okay? There are no quick fixes. There are no shortcuts. So let that go. That's the first thing. The second thing that I would say, particularly to women, is if you don't like money and you don't have a good relationship with money and it makes you feel uncomfortable, you need to lean into that discomfort. I wished I had have managed the money in my business better early on. And I wish I had have had better advice and around how to do that, because no one had ever taught me how to, do the profit and loss, how to put profit away before you spend money, all of that sort of stuff. And since I've learned that, it's been a freaking game changer. So I took my own bookkeeping back, right? And that was one of the most powerful things I did, because I just understood everything innately. So I wished earlier I had have gotten into the numbers in much more detail, even though it's not my gift. And the third lesson is, courage. It is a numbers game. So getting clients, putting yourself out there, you got to get used to being rejected, and you got to learn to love rejection and know that you can't get yeses for the big opportunities for the clients that you want unless you get no's. And so this is why I say it's a numbers game. So if you're not willing to put yourself out there and get rejected, don't do it, because that is like, it's foundational to this journey. You know, I always say, I do posts online all the time. It's like, here's what you see, here's the reality. And it's me, like, you know, global stages around the world, all these TED Talks and bloody Harvard Business Review articles. Like, this is what you see. And then I do all of these images of here's what it looks like behind the scenes. And this is what most days look like. You know, I study 25 hours a week psychology, and I fit that into running my own business, and I'm a single mum. Like, you know, there's more that people don't see than what they do. And it takes a lot of grunt work to actually, you know, evolve.
Yeah. I think that whole authentic, this is reality, actually, this is life, makes such a difference around that. So, you know, as you become this sort of leading figure overall and, you know, across adaptability and that broader philosophy you've got around intentional living, what would you say to individuals who are saying now, you know, I recognize there's a mismatch and I want to be more intentional in the way that I kind of move forward? What does that look like? What would you say?
Yeah, so I love evidence-backed tools. So there's a brilliant little tool that I use, and it's from a psychology theory, which makes no sense to anyone, which is called polyvagal theory, if anyone wants to look it up. But here's how I simplify it, right? So what happens is the way that the environment that we now live in, for many of us, has our central nervous system hyperstimulated. So most of us, without even realizing it, are operating in survival mode because our system is constantly triggered into fight, flight, or fawn. Yeah. Now, when we're in those modes, so I encourage your listeners to do this little exercise. Think of a time recently where you were in fight, flight, or fawn. And for those who don't know the fawning is equally the same. It's just one that's not as commonly known. And fawning is a lot of people, when they are triggered, go into people-pleasing overdrive to try and get things back to a point where they feel comfortable. Very common in women. So when think about a triggered state where you're in one of those states, and just complete the statement, when I'm in this state, I am, and the world is. And so what that does is it brings awareness to how, when you're triggered, you see the world and yourself through a different lens. Because what it does when you're in this triggered state, when you're in survival mode, your brain shuts down your rational reasoning centers, and it just puts you in a position where I can only see what's in front of me. We can't think long term. It impacts our ability to make quality decisions, right? So do that. And then the second component is think about a time where you felt like now, like grounded, at ease, like you're exactly where you were meant to be in the world, and complete the same sentences. When I feel grounded and connected and like the world is my oyster, I am and the world is. And look at the two side by side, because awareness is the first step to any change. And so what the awareness does, it allows you to bring the unconscious into the conscious mind. And what you'll start to notice is in the everyday, you'll go, oh, I remember what Penny said in that podcast. I'm in that triggered state. This is me in survival mode. Yeah. Breathe. Take a deep breath and say, what do I need to bring myself back into the present moment? And breath is by far and above the easiest and most powerful way to bring yourself back and to allow yourself permission to be more intentional. Sounds simplistic, but everything's a practice, right? Again, long game.
Yeah. It seems like such a simple technique to do, but yeah, we just don't take the time and the energy to actually go through and do that. So I'll definitely be trying that one as well. So you've now, like I was reading it and it says you really set some ambitious goals for yourself around, you know, really getting to the point where, you know, teaching 10 million people how to flourish kind of by 2025. So what steps are you really taking to kind of get to that, or, you know, make your way through? Like we talk about, I think it's in Traction, they talk about big, hairy, audacious goal. Like that's a big goal. And so what sort of steps are you taking to sort of head in that direction?
Yeah, it's really interesting because the timing of this is, is perfect. So again, the next iteration, right? The next evolution. So I'm doing my honors in psych. I recently completed advanced statistics. I'm just finishing meta-analysis now. Here's the thing. If you're listening and that makes you want to turn off, it makes me want to turn off. I never thought, that's not why I went into psychology. But what it's made me realize is that I do love research, because people attached to evidence People want to know what works. And so off the back of doing these subjects, I was like, you know what? I became really curious with the women that I was coaching and about the fact that I knew all of these amazing women who were doing amazing things, positively impacting the world, but they would not own the title of expert. And I was really curious about it. So I started to look into the literature around how an expert is defined from a scientific perspective, and equally what the research has to say about female experts. And two things from that literature review became very apparent. The first one was that the way that expert is defined is actually not a definition that women can relate to. All of the research speaks to experts in a very masculine way. So it's like chess experts, sporting experts, and it's about being at the top of your game. And that's not what we're talking about here. And the second thing that was really interesting to me was that less than 30% of speakers on stages around the world were female experts, and less than 14% of expert voices in the media in Australia were females. And I was like, how are we still here? And I was like, hang on, there is something going on here. So I just finished 21 interviews for a qualitative piece of research, a white paper that I'm writing, which is all around understanding how a woman, what I term an expert, defines an impact expert. Like, what does it look like to them? Who do they look up to in that domain? What holds them back from actually identifying as an impact expert? Like, what are the barriers? And what support structures and systems do we need so that I can help more of these women put themselves out into the world as experts, which means we have more female voices in the world, which creates this ripple effect of influencing a more inclusive, a more compassionate future, because women's voices still, to your point earlier, they're not seen and heard. Not like, think about the impacts of those statistics in terms of how that influences government policy, how that influences the environment that we're in. It is still very male dominated. And there's all these amazing women out there. Like, how does that? So that's kind of the next evolution of sort of the research and where I'm taking my impact. So I think even though the number is massive, it's not about me directly doing it. It's kind of like the ripple effect of doing something like this piece of research and triggering people's minds to say, you know what, we need to put more women on panels. We need more women on stages. We need more women in the voices, and activating the women to put themselves out there as that and own it.
Yeah. That is just an incredible way of putting it together. And I love the fact that you were writing the paper on it as well. And someone who's an ex-econometrics graduate as well. I get the data side. But I think, yeah, well, that's right. You need the data and the evidence behind it. I couldn't agree more that, and I guess seeing it through the corporate lens where I was mentoring, many females, through the ranks in a predominantly male-dominated industry, they kept hitting these areas where, they stopped feeling like, even though they were the go-to person, they didn't actually see themselves as the true leader, in that space. And they needed that push and that encouragement. And, kudos to a lot of the male, executives that were in my space that did support those, but you're still far and few between enough to really get those voices kind of out there to support them.
You're in the tech space, right? And this is what's interesting. I've been working with a client that actually wants to shift, obviously, what's going on with women in the tech space, because it's still, it's much less progressed than any other area. And we just do, again, because I'm all about getting my clients to do the research, so they've got the evidence to back the products that they create. Otherwise, why are we creating things? And what we came up with, which was fascinating from her research, we started with hypotheses that, I'm a technology executive who feels like I just can't find any women to work in my teams. I want to move from a male-dominated workforce to one that is more diverse and inclusive so we can enhance our competitive edge. That was our hypothesis. What came back from the research is the real problem is, how do I get HR off my back and tick the diversity box so I can get on with it?
Oh, my gosh.
Look at your face. That is what, and this is the power of research. And we were like, how the hell do we put this into the world? Because that was the truth of the essence of what was being said in the depth interviews that we did.
Wow. Yeah. And so hence that's what we need to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, big targets there. So tell me, as I come towards the end of our chat here, So you've talked about sort of what's ahead. What I'd love to be able to do is just kind of for you to reflect over the years, talking a little bit about personal style for a minute. So if you think about the woman you were in corporate, then the woman you were at the beginning of your journey as you headed into entrepreneurship, and then the woman that you really are today as you've evolved, were there any key memorable outfits, moments around your style or anything like that you think, oh gosh, yes?
Yeah, so definitely. So I was very polished in corporate. I loved dressing up, loved looking the part, and made a real effort, right? Left corporate and then went to sort of, the blazers and the jeans with T-shirts and runners or like little heel boots. And then that became the look. And what's really interesting, I think like everyone, COVID being in Melbourne changed me. And so I reckon I lived in activewear for 2 years. So I am a devout Lululemon. I've done a lot of work. They were one of my first clients. I am devout Lululemon buyer and I love their stuff and it lasts. So like I do spend a lot of time in activewear because I'm also very active. Like if I have half an hour between a meeting, I'll go and walk the dog. I will go to yoga in the middle of the day. Like this is all part of me being intentional because it makes me a better human. Yeah. And my style now, I would say, is much more bohemian. So when I do photo shoots and things like that, it's not looking polished and professional. It's more looking grounded and, like I say, quite bohemian. And I love sort of the bright colors and that sort of stuff. But to your point about was there a single outfit? The outfit that no one will ever forget was the bathing suit, the Jets bathing suit that I wore when I delivered a keynote to 120 women, professional women, to convey to them the power of getting comfortable with discomfort. And that Jets bathing suit, I still have it to this day. And doing that went viral. It went all around the world. And so many people said it was an example of someone walking the talk. I still today get people reach out about it. And Jets saw it on social media and they basically made me part of I think it was their 20-year anniversary with all of these famous people. I was part of this day where they did this filming thing and they sent me swimwear for like 3 years. Like I literally became a swimwear model at the age of like 45 with a body built for comfort, not for modeling, off the back of doing something courageous in the spirit of inspiring others to step into uncertainty.
Yeah. Oh, that is fantastic. Definitely stepping into, that discomfort in a swimsuit. I think that's the number one thing I get a lot of clients say to me. Oh, the two things I hate shopping for, jeans and swimsuits. Yep. Like the two biggest frustration points. So now I'm just going to dive into really some fast, quick questions for you. Yeah. So, parking the swimsuit and the bohemian, what is your go-to signature style piece that you feel right now really represents you and why an essential part of your wardrobe?
My black leather jacket.
And why?
Because it's timeless. And I always say, if you're going to, I'm a big fan of quality over quantity. And that jacket was not cheap. But I've got two black leather jackets. The one that I bought before that, I have had since before my son was born. And I still wear it. And that's a 15-year-old leather jacket. And then I've got one that I bought 5 years ago. And so I would say it's definitely the black leather jacket because I feel it's a bit like me. The older it gets and the more worn it is, the better it gets.
Oh, perfect. And so then if you think about some of my listeners, and you've given a tip around this already, but those looking for a little bit of inspiration and they're looking for maybe a transformational book or something to listen to that might, expand their mind a little bit. Do you have anything that you're currently reading or have read that made a significant impact on your journey?
So writing my own book definitely did that.
Yes.
My book, Hacking Happiness, if people want really practical ways to navigate the uncertainty, I would definitely recommend that. Isn't that funny? It's right on my desk. And I finished this 2 months ago. I can't get it off my desk. It's called Lighter and it's by Jung Pablo. And it basically says on the cover, let go of the past, connect with the present and expand the future. It is one of the most beautiful, easy reads for anyone who wants to feel more grounded in a very noisy world. And he just has the most magnificent words.
I haven't read that one, so it's now going on my list to grab. So thank you. And then finally, we all have those days when we need an extra boost. So what would be your quick mindset ritual that helps you really ready to tackle anything?
I can do hard things. So I've just finished drafting. I've got probably 2 hours more work on a meta-analysis paper. Most psych papers take me 4 days to write because the research and the writings are 1,400 words. The more I do it, it never gets easier. You know, I finessed it as much as I can, but I constantly tell myself when I feel stuck or something's hard or I don't want to do it, I tell myself I can do hard things. And that's how I get HDs in advanced statistics when I am not a statistics person, because I'm willing to take the time to do things and do them well because I know the power of a long game.
Oh, love that. I can do hard things. That's an incredible way to end our podcast. Now, Penny, that's been an incredibly insightful conversation. If people want to connect with you or follow you along, they've now got the book as well that they can go grab. Where is the best place to connect with you?
Yeah, I would definitely say reach out on LinkedIn. Just find me under my name on LinkedIn, or you can follow me on Instagram, HackingHappy.co.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Penny. It's been wonderful to connect and have a chat.
Thanks for having me, Sonia. It's been great.
Thank you so much for being part of this inspiring episode. If you found value in today's discussion, please don't keep it a secret. Share it with a friend on social media, tag me at Your Style Collective, and leave a review. Your support means the world. Join me again next week for another empowering episode of Style and Strategy, the Leadership Series. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, you're already taking that first step towards your transformation journey. See you next time.